You know, if I could do it again, I would not have myself right after that video. So, hey, good morning. It is so good to see all of you on Easter Sunday, and so many of you are dressed up. I dressed up. I will not be wearing this next week or anything nearly as nice, just to set expectations low, okay? Low expectations, key to success. That's where we are. Hey, we're so thrilled that you're here today on Easter Sunday when we celebrate this, that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came to earth on Friday, was crucified by the Roman government, and rose from the grave on Sunday morning. And so that's what we're here to celebrate this morning. Now, I understand on a day like today, all of us have different backgrounds in terms of our experiences growing up. Some of us know a lot about the Bible. Some of us don't even know where a Bible is. There's one in the pew in front of you. I'm going to refer to that later just so you know where it is. Okay, but there can be like a lot of questions. And I'll let you know, if you're unfamiliar with church, if you don't have a church background, starting next week, we're going to do a series titled Permission Granted, where we're going to kind of ask all the questions that we thought we weren't allowed to ask and think all the thoughts about God and church that we thought were kind of off limits. And we're going to say, hey, you have permission to ask these questions. So I hope you'll join us for that. But today, I want to address one thing in particular that for me personally was confusing and at times very bothersome to me. So I grew up in the church. That's just kind of where I raised. We had church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I was there every single time. And there was one spot on Easter that always kind of threw me off. And I loved Easter Sunday, except my parents made me wear a tie. It was a clip-on tie, which was fine. This is not a clip-on tie. I'm sure some of you were wondering. But my parents, yeah, applause for the lack of way to be an adult. But it was, so I really liked Easter Sunday, but there was one spot of every Easter Sunday that just really threw me off. And it was the spot where someone said that, like, hey, Jesus died for your sins. Not just sins in general, but Jesus died specifically for your sins. And at the time, I'd look at that and it was like, I was 8. Like, Jesus died on the cross for your sins. And I'm sitting back there and I'm like, the worst thing I've ever done is I bit my sister. And it just like, it kind of threw me off. And I was like, that felt like an overreaction. And that's kind of our theme today. I was like, I feel like Jesus is taking this a little too far, that he would have to die on the cross for my sins because I told a few lies and hit my sister and bit her a couple times. Like, I was like, this is a lot. And then it would always transition into these comments. Someone would talk about the wrath of God. Like, Jesus died on the cross to satisfy the wrath of God. And I just wanted to, like, this is stuff that I couldn't say in service. I guess I can say now because I'm up here. But I felt like sitting in service, I just want to be like, maybe he should just chill out? Like, is that okay? Could we say that? Like, maybe God should cool it a little bit? Like, this wrath thing, this is a bit much for me. This is a lot. And I just kind of had this general sense that the cross might have been kind of an overreaction to my sin. That Jesus had taken a little bit too far because the stuff I had done, it wasn't that bad. And I don't know if you've ever had that thought, but I want to tell you, if you have, we are not the only ones who have ever thought those things. And we're going to look at a passage out of the Bible today where a group of people are in conversation with Jesus, and they're kind of struggling with that idea that Jesus might have overreacted. So if you have your Bible with you, we're going to be in John chapter 8 this morning. If you do not have your Bible with you or have a Bible at all, you can use the one in the pew in front of you. If you don't have a Bible at all, that is our gift to you. We're going to be on page 890 this morning. And if reaching for the Bible in the pew in front of you and turning to the page number that we've already given is a bit too much work, we will have the words on the screen. So you can look at that. So the passage that we're going to look at today is this conversation that Jesus has with a group of people who feel like Jesus has taken things a little bit too far, that he might have gone overboard and overreacted a little bit. And I want to show you what this dialogue looks like. We're going to pick it up in verse 31. So this is John chapter 8, verse 31. It says, Jesus said to the people who believed in him, "You are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Just out of curiosity, how many of you have ever heard that phrase before? Whether it's in church or some like Law and Order or something like this is, Law and Order loves this. The truth will set you free. This is the context in which we'll finally know as to why those words were spoken. So he says, and you know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And this is their response. They say, but we are descendants of Abraham, they said. We have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean you will be set free? And so we see something interesting, that Jesus' statement that the truth will set you free actually really bothered this group of people. Like, what do you mean we'll be set free? Like, we're free. Trust me right now, like, we're perfectly fine. We're free. But then Jesus he doubles down on it. He ups the ante and he makes the statement even stronger. Verse 34, it says this, Jesus replied, I tell you the truth, everyone who sins is a slave of sin. Wow. There's no mincing words at that. He doesn't just say the truth will set you free. He says, no, listen, here's the deal. Everyone who sins is a slave of sin. Now, this part, it really bothered me and it was really confusing to me. And we're going to pick that back up in just a little bit. But I want to talk about that idea that everyone who sins is a slave to sin, which may throw us off because we wouldn't say that. Like, I wouldn't say that. I would say, no, I sinned. I messed up. I did something wrong. I made a mistake. And Jesus goes, no. If you sinned, you're a slave of sin. I go, no. It's just this little thing. And Jesus goes, no, we need to be clear. That means that you're a slave to sin. So let's get a quick check here, okay? Who has ever lied? Who has ever lied? Yeah, lots of us. Who has ever hit their sibling? Hopefully not recently. We'll say when you're younger. There are authorities in the room. Okay, we'll keep it clean. Who has ever bit their sister? Just, hey, good, I'm not alone. All right, there we go. Yeah. Now, when we look at these things, we would be like, okay, I did that. But then Jesus would say, no, you're a slave to sin. That's what that is saying, is that you are a slave to sin. You are owned by sin. If I could say it even stronger, sin is your master. I would kind of give a rebuttal to that. Be like, no, I don't really think so. But I want to talk about two distinct ways in which we are slaves to sin. The first one is how when we sin, we become caught and trapped by it. So I don't know how many of you have experienced a scenario like this, but when I think I was around 10 years old, I was playing on our school's basketball team. And my dad was the coach of our basketball team, and it was late after practice one day, and my dad was talking to some of the other parents. And this is before cell phones, this is before iPods and iPads and Kindle Fires and all those things. And I say all that so that you would know that I was bored, okay? Children today do not know what that feels like, but I was bored. I had nothing to do. And so I found a discovery that is only in museums today, that on the wall near where I was a payphone. Now, if you're a child, payphones are these phones that were stationary in place and you had to put money in, and then you could call people, but you had to remember their numbers because we used to remember people's not their cell phone numbers, we just used to remember their telephone numbers. So I had nothing to do, and so I start playing on the payphone, and I start dialing all the numbers I knew. I knew my home phone number. I did all these other things, but I had no money, okay? So I'm just bored, and I'm passing the time, and I keep just dialing because I have no money. And then I thought, I know another number. I know the number for emergency services. So, see, I didn't know that. I thought I had to pay money. I wish I would have known that. And so I pick up the phone, and I dial 911, and I hear 911 emergency services, and I hung up the phone. And I thought, this was not a good thing. Now, apparently, you don't have to respond to 911. This was all new information to me. They come anyway. All you have to do is call, and they come. And so we left. Finally, my dad and the other parents were done talking, so we left, and the cops came, and we get a thing to our team the next week. My dad addressed the team and said, hey, listen, here's the deal. Apparently, last week, someone called 911, and the school wants all of us to check with everyone, because if no one confesses to calling 911, we may not be able to have practices here anymore. So did anyone here call 911? What did I say? Nope. I don't know of anyone. How would you even do that? And then, because no one confessed, my dad talked to every parent and said, hey, this is what I like. I like for every parent to address their kid. Every parent should talk to their kid and make sure they didn't call 911. So later on that night, my dad goes, hey, we're having every parent address their kid. Did you call 911? No, I did not. Then, a week later, a report surfaces that the janitor who was cleaning the school at night saw a man talking to two other parents while his red-headed son was playing on the phone. And it says, this is the report that was given. Did you call 911? What did I say? Oh, no. No, I didn't do that. Now, eventually, I confessed to my crime. But this is what happened. For a month, that weight sat on my shoulders. And honestly, my constant thought was, when are they going to find out I lied? When are they going to find out I do this? When are they going to find out that how much trouble I'm in? And in a sense, my sin became my master because it was all that I could think about. And so by sinning, I acquired a new master for my life because of the sin that was in my life. So that's one way that sin is our master. The second way, I think, is far more, it may be more complex to understand, but it's far more everyday, and it has to do with our desires. So here on staff, we go out to eat, usually after staff meeting every week. And every time we go out to eat, the staff typically makes fun of me. And they say that while I have the body of a fully grown adult, that I have the palate of a 12-year-old, which is reasonably accurate. I really, really like chicken nuggets, okay? I'm not a fancy guy. I just think chicken nuggets are fantastic. And so if we go to Wendy's, I'm gonna get chicken nuggets. If we go to McDonald's, I'm gonna get chicken nuggets. If we go to BW3's, I'm gonna get the adult version, which is boneless wings of chicken nuggets. If we go to Chinese, I'm gonna get the Chinese version of chicken nuggets. They call it sweet and sour chicken, okay? It's not complicated. No matter where I go, I know what I'm getting. Sometimes I'll look at the menu and they'll be like, why? Why are you even looking at the menu? You know, just order their version of chicken nuggets. And I do. And I'm happy, and I'm satisfied, and life is good. Let's pray. No, I'm just kidding. So I just kind of go through this over and over again. Now, this is what has never happened. So, like, sometimes someone will order something, I'm like, ooh, that looks good. Maybe next time I'll get that. That does look nice. But at no point has the waiter or waitress ever come to take my order, and I have gone, I'd like a salad. Oh, no, wait, no, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I meant to say. Never happened. They've never come to me and said, what would you like, sir? And I've gone, hamburger. Oh, I misspoke. Sorry, I spoke out of character. That's not what I meant to say. Every single time, I know what I want, and I can clearly order, and then I receive what I want. Now, you may look at that and you go, duh, that's obvious. This is how restaurants work. But look at something that I think is really interesting, is that's not what happens in the rest of our lives. So when it comes to my food, I know my desires, and I can clearly act on my desires. But that's not necessarily the way it is with my family. Like, I had a friend who said it like this, and this quote has always stuck with me. He says it like this: I want my house to be peaceful, and yet I find that I'm most often the one yelling. Look at that. He says, clearly, this is what I desire. This is what I want. And yet when I look at my actions, they do not point to my desires. I have this hope. I have this picture, this vision of how I want to be known by my family, by my friends, by people around me. And yet consistently, over and over again, I act in a way that is contrary to my desires and my hopes. Now, this should bother us deeply. I think normally we do these things over and over again, and people will respond and they'll just be like, yeah, I don't know why I did that. I acted out of character. But why? Why do we do this in our lives, and yet we don't struggle with it when it comes to food and other circumstances? I think the only explanation is that we are slaves of sin. If you do not act in a way that is in accordance with your desires. Your only explanation is that you're not the master of your own life, that something else has mastered you and you are in submission to it. Now, this is what I'd like to do, and I'm not going to get super specific because I know there's a lot of different examples on this, but I want to ask you some questions as to if maybe you are mastered by sin and have never stopped long enough to actually acknowledge it. You don't have to respond out loud, okay? I ask you, please, do not respond out loud. This is just for you. But here's the first question I'd like to ask you. Have you ever done something you knew wasn't best? Have you ever done something you knew wasn't best? This should be problematic. I go, why would I do that? Like, at no other point in my life would I just say, hey, I'm deliberately gonna do this thing that I know is not great. But we do it all the time with our actions. Second question I'd like to ask you is this. Have you ever resolved to quit something and then excused yourself to take it back up? Have you ever had that moment of clarity where you said, no longer will I do this or say this or act this way? And then time goes on, temptation hits, and we don't just do it, we always excuse it. We form together all these responses and we go, well, yeah, this is why it's fine. This is why it's excusable. This is why it's okay. This doesn't make sense per our desires. Third question I'd like to ask you. Have you ever reacted and then thought, why did I do that? I do this with my kids all the time. They'll say something, they'll do something, and I'll jump out, I'll lash out, they'll melt down crying, and I'll just kind of have this moment. I don't have like this deep confession morning, okay, in the moment, but I just go, well, I lost that one. Like, I did not win that situation with my children. And here's the thing, like, this should bother us. And we so often, we just quickly move through life going on to the next thing that we never pause to reflect on our actions and go, why would I do this? Why would I rationalize behavior that I know is not okay? Why would I do something that is less than ideal? Why would I act out in a way that I know is not true to the person who I want to be? And Jesus says it right here. He says it so clearly. He says, no, the issue is this. It's not that you sin. It's not that you messed up. It's not that you made a mistake. Because everyone who sins is indeed a slave of sin. Now, this for me helped me understand this idea of the wrath of God. And every Easter, someone would come up and they'd talk about the wrath of God. And my thought every time was, God needs to chill out. Like, seriously, this is like, my mom tells me not to be angry. God's mom should tell him not to be angry. That's what we need to have ever. Like, he needs to take it down a couple notches. But I began to understand the wrath of God in a very different way. And I found this especially through this verse in Romans chapter 1, verse 18, which we're going to put on the screens for you. It says this: the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Now, I want you to pay careful attention to the language of what it says. It says it's being revealed against all the godlessness and wickedness of people. Now, for so many years, I read this as it's being revealed against the godless and the wicked, but that's not what it says. It's not being poured out on people. It's being poured out on the part of people that is wicked. And this is what God is mad about. This is what makes God angry, is the part of you that makes you a slave to sin. The parts of your life that have mastered you. So let me explain it like this. So a couple months ago, my wife and I, we went to the outlet malls and we were gonna go out shopping. And then we were gonna go to different stores because I hit like 8 stores in the time she goes to one store. And so we were gonna split up. And we have 4 kids, which you need to acknowledge is we make bad decisions. And so We're there with our 4 children, and anytime we split up with 4 kids, we kind of have this barter system that we go through. It's not as simple, you go this way, you go that way. We kind of have to like talk it out and debate and make trades and go back and forth. And so we're gonna go our separate ways. And my wife, Bethany, she's like, okay, I'll take our older 2. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not. The older 2, those are the easy 2. And she goes, okay, well then I'll take kid 1 and kid 3. I'm like, no. 2 and 4 are all the trouble. We know that. Like this one's the bad one. Okay, so that comes at a hefty price. And so I'm not telling you which one's the bad one. Did you see how I did that? Kept that general. And so we're kind of going back and forth. And so finally we agree, she's going to take kid 1 and kid 4, and I'm going to take kid 2 and kid 3. And this is going to be an even exchange. So I go into a store, I walk into the store. I've got my 2 middle kids there. They're both girls. They're 4 and 2 years old. And so I tell them, hey, listen, here's the deal. I'm going to go look at this rack right here. You need to stand right here. And they're actually standing in the middle of a circle. I go, you see the circle that you're standing in? Do not leave the circle. Whatever you do, you cannot step outside the circle. And so I go and I look at the rack and I come back and there are no children there. And I look around and I'm like, oh my goodness, where are my kids? Like, where have they gone? For those of you parents who get really nervous, I'll resolve the story, then I'll give you the illustration first, okay? I found out that they were in the middle of one of those circle clothing racks, that they had kind of waded their way past the clothes, like the Chronicles of Narnia in the wardrobe, and they're now standing in the very middle of it. And the only reason why I knew that is because I saw a guy looking through that clothes rack and all of a sudden go, oh! And so here's a parenting tip that I learned. Instead of telling my kids where to go in a store now, I just put them in the middle of a clothing rack. And it's fantastic. And I know if they're moving, the clothes are rustling, and so it works really well. But for that second that I turned around and I didn't see them and I didn't know where they were, I like quickly checked the store. I looked all around, see if I could see anything. And then I had two distinct emotions in that moment. I was afraid and I was really angry. Like in that moment, all of a sudden, it hit me very, very clearly. I was fearful as to if someone had taken my children. And I was really, really mad if someone actually did take my children. And like that thought, I'm sure that stuck with every parent as to what do you do if your kids are taken? And my struggle right there is, unlike Liam Neeson, I do not have a unique set of skills that makes me dangerous to people like that. I talk a lot and I make some jokes here and there, which I'm kind of up a creek without a paddle when it comes to that. And so, but like I had the moment is like, well, what's gonna happen? And I was mad. Now, this is what I think is so important, is my anger in that moment is the right response. The idea that someone was attempting to hurt my children, me being mad about that, was the correct response. I should be mad at the things that seek to destroy us. And so this is what God is showing us in this moment. God isn't mad at you. God's not angry at you. But he is furious about what within you seeks to master you. He is angry about the part of you that is within you that makes you a slave to sin. And to be mad at what seeks to destroy us is the healthiest response possible. Like, we don't have neutral, even reactions to horrible news. We shouldn't. And this is what God is saying in this moment, is the thing that brings out his wrath is the sin within us that seeks to destroy us. And so after Jesus has this conversation with these people and he says, no, if you sin, you are a slave to sin. He then clarifies what he is going to do about it. And this is what he says, John 8, verse 35. A slave is not a permanent member of the family, but a son is part of the family forever. So, if the Son sets you free, you are truly free. This is what Jesus is saying. Is that I have come so that your identity would be transformed from that of a slave to that of a son. I have come, the reason why I'm here is so that you would no longer be a slave to sin, but you would be a son of God with all the inheritance and rights that come with that. Now, this is what's so tricky, is in order to be released from slavery, this comes at a price. There is a cost to being released from slavery, and you can't pay it because it's already your master. You can't pay the price that it will take to be released from slavery. And this is what I see, and this is what you see, is we live our lives in some way attempting to purchase our freedom. We live our lives in some way attempting to validate our identity as sons. And so we seek to accomplish all these things as if our accomplishments will in some way secure our identity. We seek to do good deeds as if somehow this will offset the sin that lives within us. I love it. Henry David Thoreau, it's kind of a loose adaptation of his original quote today, but we say it like this. We say, most men live lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with a song still in them. Most men live lives of quiet desperation and go to the graves with a song still in them. Why is that? Why do we try so hard to validate ourselves and continuously come up short? Why are we so frustrated with the existence that we have? Why do we feel inherently as if we're inadequate and we need to do something in order to make it right? And Jesus says this, I've paid the price that you can't. I understand the cross like this. God got bloody, so we didn't have to. God paid the price that we could never pay on our own. And here is my concern, is if we view the cross as an overreaction, if that is what we walk in here with and we go, I feel like this is a bit much. I feel like the wrath of God is too much. I feel like the cross is kind of an overreaction to our sin. What that means, if we view the cross as an overreaction, is it means we have underresponded. It means we have not responded appropriately to the severity of the life that we're living and the sin that seeks and has mastered us. I love it. C.S. Lewis, he says it like this, and I think this is such a powerful, powerful quote. He says, Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of ultimate importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. If it's false, then it doesn't matter. If it's true, it means everything. The only thing it cannot have is this middle ground. And so this is the idea that I want you to walk away with this morning, and I hope this bothers you, is that the cross wasn't an overreaction. The cross was the right response to our slavery. It wasn't an overreaction because we're slaves. And if we'd paused long enough, we would be very, very aware of that. It was the right response to our slavery. And this is why we've put all the effort we have into this morning. This is why the band is practiced. This is why we've put the videos together. This is why we've had so many people greeting you, is in hopes that you would respond. Is in hopes that you would move out of this middle ground of faith, kind of there, kind of important. And you would understand the significance of what God has done. And you would understand the significance of what he's calling you to do and to become as a response to the cross. And so this is what we're gonna do, is the band's gonna come up and they're gonna play a song that they're gonna sing over us. And throughout this song, we're gonna play a couple videos. What you're gonna do is you're gonna see two stories of people who have gone through some difficulties and struggles and how the cross has shaped their life and what they've become. And after the second video, I'm gonna come back up here and I'm gonna invite you to respond to the cross. I'm gonna invite you to actually respond to the significance of what Jesus did on the cross. And so that's my hope for us this morning, is we would see Jesus for who he truly is, and we would maybe finally see ourselves for who he's called us to become. So let's respond together.